Environmental interactions. Energy in an environment. What is an energy pathway? The path in which energy is passed from one living thing to another. What is the origin of energy in living things? The sun. Why are plants called food producers? They produce their own food. What happens to food that plants make? Some get used up to carry out life processes. Others get stored as starch. Why are animals called consumers? They have to eat or consume their food. What do we call animals that get energy from plants by eating plants or plant parts? Plant eaters. What are some examples of plant eaters? Giraffes, elephants, caterpillars, and grasshoppers. What do we call animals that get energy by eating the meat of other animals? Meat eaters. What are predators? Predators are animals that hunt, kill, and eat other animals. What are prey? They are animals that are hunted and eaten by other animals. What are decomposers? Decomposers break down living things that have died. They are mostly fungi and bacteria. What happens to the remains of dead plants and animals after decomposers feed on them? They are broken down into mineral salts, water, and carbon dioxide. What happens to the mineral salts? They become part of the soil and are taken in by plants through the roots. What is a food chain? Food chain shows the flow of energy from one living thing to the next. It starts with a food producer and usually ends with a meat eater. Here are some examples of food chains. Grass is eaten by the grasshopper, which is then eaten by the frog, which is eaten by the owl, and which is eaten by the snake, which is eaten by the owl. Microorganisms are eaten by the krill, which is eaten by the squid, which is eaten by the tuna, which is eaten by the shark. What is a food web? It is a diagram that links all the food chains in an environment together. What strategies could you employ in drawing a food web? Here's something to think about. What is an organism? It is a living thing. What is a population? It is a group of organisms of the same kind that live and reproduce in the same environment. What is a community? It is populations living together and interacting with one another in the same environment. A community can be made up of different types of organisms. How are populations in a community dependent on one another? They are dependent on one another for food and shelter. Where would you find animals in a seashore habitat? You would find them underwater, hiding in rocks or in the sand. What sort of animals would you find in the rocks? Crabs, starfish, and barnacles. How do these animals get food? The waves that come to shore bring food to these animals. What would you find in the sand? Clams and marine worms. What other animals can you find there? Horseshoe crabs, mud skippers, seagulls, seaweed, sea urchins, to name a few. Pond habitat. What land animals live near a pond habitat? Examples include birds, mice, and lizards. What animals lay their eggs in the pond? Dragonflies and frogs. What plants can you find there? Mosses, water lilies, cattail, duckweeds, underwater plants like hydrillas and Eliodis, just to name a few. What else can you find there? Freshwater fish like goldfish and guppies, and insects like the water boatmen, pond skaters and water fleas, terrapin, geese. What plants can you find in the field? Grasses like the lalang and love grass, mimosas, clovers, Cupid's shaving brush. What animals can you find there? Bees, animals that live along the plant leaves like spiders, grasshoppers, woodlouse, stingbugs and ants, and snakes found underground or along the ground. What can you find in the soil? Worms, termites, and small burrowing animals like mice. What can you find in the garden? A wide variety of plants, including flowering plants like the hibiscus and bougainvillea. What sort of insects can you find there? Ants, beetles, bees, and butterflies. What are these insects eaten by? Spiders and birds. What can you find in the soil? Worms, centipedes, and millipedes. What else can you find there? Snails, to name a few. The tree habitat. What can you find in the trunk and base of a tree? You might find fungi, mosses, and grasses. In the tree trunk, you can find termites, cicadas, tree frogs, chameleons, and birds' nest ferns. What else can you find in the tree? Birds that build nests on trees, monkeys, squirrels, and bats.